had always loved the stars. When she was a little girl, she would sit on the roof of her family's small house and look up at the night sky. She would imagine what was out there, beyond the clouds and beyond the moon. She dreamed of meeting beings from other worlds and learning their secrets. When Earth made first contact with alien species 50 years ago, everything changed. Humans learned they were not alone. The galaxy was full of life, full of civilizations far older and more advanced than humanity. Some of these species were kind, some were not, but all of them looked at humans the same way. They saw a young species, weak and small, barely taking their first steps into the stars. Earth wanted peace. Human leaders smiled and bowed to the alien ambassadors. They traded fairly and never raised their voices. They let insults pass without comment. They pretended not to notice when aliens treated them like children. This was the strategy: be humble, be patient, survive. Was 19 years old when she was selected for the Interstellar Exchange Program. The Dominion, one of the most powerful alien empires, had invited 20 human students to study on their orbital stations. It was supposed to be a gesture of friendship, a chance for young humans to learn about the galaxy. Was so happy when she received the news. Her mother cried and held her tight. Her father warned her to be careful, but she could see the pride in his eyes. She was going to represent humanity among the stars. She was going to make them all proud. The journey to orbital Nexus 7 took 3 weeks. The station was massive, larger than any city had ever seen. It floated in space like a great metal flower with thousands of lights shining from its many levels. 12,000 beings lived there from dozens of different species. There were the rulers, tall creatures with gray skin and 4 eyes. They walked with pride and spoke with authority. They had conquered many worlds and built a great empire. Tried to make friends. She smiled at everyone she met. She learned phrases in different alien languages. She worked hard in her xenobiology classes and always showed respect to her teachers. But something was wrong. She could feel it from the first day. They did not see her as an equal. They saw her as something lesser, a curiosity, a pet. Most of the aliens on the station simply ignored her. They walked past her as if she did not exist. When she asked for help, they pretended not to hear. When she tried to join conversations, they turned away. It was lonely, but told herself it would get better. She just needed to try harder. Then she met. Was the son of High Ambassador, one of the most powerful in the Dominion. He was young for his species, but old enough to know better. He had 4 eyes like all, but his were filled with cruelty. He wore fine clothes and walked like he owned the station. In many ways, he did. Noticed on her second week. He watched her from across the dining hall, his 4 eyes tracking her movements. She tried to ignore him, but she could feel his gaze like cold water on her skin. The harassment started small, would return to her quarters and find her belongings moved. Her clothes would be thrown on the floor. Her study materials would be missing. She reported these incidents to Station Commander, a serious-looking with scars on his face. He listened to her complaints with bored eyes. "Perhaps you are simply careless," he said. "Humans are known to be disorganized." Knew that was not true, but she said nothing. She cleaned up her room and tried to move on. But things got worse. One day sat down to eat in the dining hall. She took one bite of her food and immediately felt sick. Her stomach burned. Her head spun. She collapsed on the floor, gasping for air. The aliens around her watched with interest, but no one helped. No one called for a doctor. They just watched. Spent 2 days in the medical bay. The doctor told her that someone had put a substance in her food, something that was harmless to most species, but poisonous to humans. "An accident," the doctor said without looking at her. "You should be more careful about what you eat." Knew it was not an accident. She had seen watching her in the dining hall, a smile on his face. She tried to report him, but Station Commander refused to see her. She sent messages to the other human students, but they were scattered across different levels of the station. They had their own problems. Some of them had already given up and gone home. The attacks continued, would find hateful words painted on her door, words in the language that she did not understand but she could guess their meaning. Sometimes, and his friends would follow her through the corridors, making sounds that might have been laughter. They called her names. They pushed her when no one was watching. They made her life a living nightmare. Stopped eating in the dining hall. She stopped going to social areas. She stayed in her quarters as much as possible, only leaving for classes. She lost weight. She stopped smiling. The girl who had dreamed of the stars was slowly disappearing. One night was walking back to her quarters after a late class. The corridors were empty. The lights were dim. She walked quickly, her heart beating fast in her chest. She heard footsteps behind her. Started to run, but it was too late. Hands grabbed her from the shadows. She tried to scream, but something covered her mouth. She was dragged into a maintenance bay, a dark room full of pipes and machines. Was waiting for her. He was not alone. 6 of his friends stood around him, their 4 eyes shining in the darkness. One of them held a recording device, its red light blinking. "Hello, little human," said. His voice was soft, almost friendly. "We are going to teach you a lesson about your place in the galaxy." What happened next was something we'd never forget. They hit her. They kicked her. They laughed as she fell to the ground and curled into a ball. She begged them to stop, but her words only made them laugh harder. They recorded everything, their device capturing every moment of her pain. Did not know how long it lasted. It felt like hours. When they finally stopped, she could barely move. Her body was broken in a dozen places. Blood pooled beneath her on the cold metal floor. Leaned down and whispered in her ear, "No one cares about you, human. No one will come to help you. You are nothing." Then they left. They left her alone in the darkness, bleeding and broken. But was not completely helpless. Before she lost consciousness, she managed to reach into her pocket. Her fingers found the small emergency beacon that all human students carried. She pressed the button with her last bit of strength. The signal flew through space at the speed of light. It traveled 17 minutes to reach the nearest relay station. From there, it was transmitted to Earth. 17 hours later, the signal reached Admiral at Earth Defense Command. He was an old man with white hair and kind eyes that hid a core of steel. He had served humanity for 40 years. He had seen many things. But when he watched the footage that came with the emergency signal, his hands began to shake. The video showed everything. It showed a young human girl being beaten by aliens while they laughed. It showed her begging for mercy. It showed her blood on the floor. Admiral watched the video 3 times. Then he made a single call. "Wake the ghosts," he said. "We have a mission." Somewhere deep beneath the mountains, in a facility that did not exist on any map, lights began to turn on. Soldiers who had been sleeping opened their eyes. They did not know why they had been awakened, but they knew what it meant. Someone had hurt one of their people. And Earth was going to respond. The facility had no name. It existed beneath the mountains of the Korean peninsula, hidden from satellites and sensors. No road led to it. No map showed its location. To the rest of the galaxy, it did not exist. That was exactly how Earth wanted it. Captain walked through the long metal corridors with steady steps. He was 32 years old, but his body had been modified since he was a child. He did not look different from a normal human. That was the point. The changes were all on the inside. His bones were reinforced with carbon, making them nearly unbreakable. His muscles contained synthetic fibers that made him 3 times stronger than ordinary humans. His eyes could see in almost total darkness. His reflexes were fast enough to catch a bullet, and his mind had been trained to feel nothing in combat. No fear, no hesitation, no mercy. Was a ghost. He was humanity's secret weapon. The galaxy believed that humans were weak. They thought Earth had no real military power. They saw human diplomats smiling and bowing, and they assumed that was all humanity could do. This was exactly what Earth wanted them to think. For 50 years, Earth had hidden its true strength. While diplomats traded and negotiated, scientists worked in secret facilities around the world. They studied alien technology and improved upon it. They developed weapons that no other species had imagined, and they created soldiers who could do impossible things. The Ghost Division was the darkest secret in human history. Only a handful of people knew it existed. Not even the President of the United Nations knew about them. They answered only to Admiral and a small council of military leaders who understood one simple truth. Peace was wonderful, but peace needed protection. Entered the briefing room and found his team already waiting. Lieutenant sat in the front row, her dark eyes fixed on the empty screen. She was the team's infiltration specialist, able to move through any environment without being detected. Sergeant leaned against the wall, his massive arms crossed over his chest. He was the demolitions expert, a man who could turn any situation into a controlled explosion. And Corporal sat in the corner with a tablet in her hands, already hacking into systems that she should not have access to. She was their intelligence officer, the eyes and ears of every mission. They were all ghosts. They had trained together for 10 years. They trusted each other completely. Admiral entered the room, and everyone stood at attention. The old man waved them down and walked to the front of the room. His face was calm, but could see the anger burning in his eyes. 18 hours ago, the Admiral began, we received an emergency signal from Orbital Nexus 7. One of our exchange students, a 19-year-old girl named, was attacked. He pressed a button and the screen lit up. The video played. No one spoke as they watched a young human girl being beaten by aliens. They watched her fall to the ground. They watched her beg for mercy. They watched her blood spread across the metal floor. When the video ended, the room was silent, looked at his team. Hands were clenched into fists, jaw was tight, had stopped looking at her tablet, her face pale with rage. The authorities have done nothing, Admiral continued. They claim the incident is being investigated, but we both know what that means. The main attacker is son of High Ambassador. He is untouchable under law. What are our orders, sir? Asked. The Admiral looked at him with cold eyes. Extract and bring her home, capture and his accomplices for trial on Earth, and send a message to the galaxy that no one hurts our people without consequences. Smiled, it was not a pleasant smile. What kind of message, Admiral? The kind they will never forget. 3 hours later, the stealth vessel Silent Thunder launched from a hidden base in the Pacific Ocean. It rose through the atmosphere without a single radar detecting it. Its outer hull was covered in materials that absorbed all sensor readings. To the rest of the universe, it was invisible. The journey to Orbital Nexus 7 would take 42 hours. Use the time to study everything about the station. He memorized the layout of every corridor, every room, every maintenance shaft. He learned the patrol patterns of the security forces. He studied the weaknesses in their sensor network. Sat beside him, going through the same information. 12,000 residents, she said quietly. Heavy military presence. They have a fleet of 15 warships in orbit. The Silent Thunder can handle the fleet if necessary, replied. We go in quiet, find, capture the targets, get out. And if we can't stay quiet? Looked at her, then we get loud. Had already sliced into the station's communication network. She was pulling data from their systems, learning their security codes and preparing to take control when the time came. She was good, very good. They had no idea she was inside their network. I found, announced. She's in the medical bay on level 7, stable condition but barely. They fixed her injuries but left her alone. No guards, no protection, they don't even care. Shook his head in disgust. They will care soon. The Silent Thunder dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the star system. The fleet detected nothing. Their sensors showed empty space where a human warship was floating less than 50 kilometers away. On the station, life continued as normal. Merchants sold their goods, diplomats argued about treaties, and in a luxurious lounge on level 12 was celebrating. He sat surrounded by his friends, the same ones who had helped him beat the human girl. They were drinking expensive liquids and laughing about their adventure, was describing how the human had begged for mercy, imitating her voice in a mocking way. His friends laughed and praised him. "Did you see her face?" one of them asked. "She was so scared." "Humans are pathetic," said. "They smile and bow like servants, but inside they are weak. That girl learned her place. She learned what happens when a lower species forgets its position." His father, High Ambassador, had told him not to worry about consequences. Humans would do nothing. They would complain through diplomatic channels, file some reports, and eventually forget. That was how humans worked. They were too afraid to fight back. Had no idea how wrong he was. Deep in the station's maintenance tunnels, a shadow moved. It made no sound. It left no trace. The sensors did not detect it. The cameras did not see it. It passed through locked doors as if they did not exist. Captain had arrived. He moved through the darkness with perfect control. His camouflage suit bent light around his body, making him nearly invisible. His soft boots absorbed all sound. He was a ghost in truth as well as name. Behind him, the rest of his team spread out through the station, moved toward the medical bay where was being kept, made his way toward the military armory, carrying a bag full of surprises, and stayed on the silent thunder, her fingers dancing across keyboards as she took control of system after system. They thought they were safe. They thought their station was impenetrable. They thought they were the predators. They were about to learn the truth. Reached a junction and paused. Through his enhanced hearing, he could detect voices coming from the lounge above. He recognized the sound of laughter, the same laughter that had echoed through the video of beating. His hand moved to the weapon at his side. It was not a standard gun. It fired no bullets and made no noise. It would put a target to sleep in less than a second, leaving no permanent damage. The ghosts were not here to kill. They were here to capture, to expose, and to teach a lesson. But if killing became necessary, was ready for that too. "All units report," he whispered into his communicator. "In position, I have eyes on." "In position, charges planted, ready on your command." "Standing by, I have full control of station communications, ready to broadcast." Allowed himself a small smile. Everything was perfect. "Execute Phase 1, he ordered. "Secure." Above him, continued to laugh, completely unaware that his world was about to change forever. He had hurt a human and expected no consequences. He had forgotten a simple truth that all predators eventually learn. Sometimes the prey has teeth. Lieutenant moved through the corridors like water flowing through cracks. She made no sound. She cast no shadow. The security cameras turned away from her as if guided by an invisible hand. Was doing good work from the ship. The medical bay was on level 7, in a quiet section of the station reserved for minor emergencies. They had more advanced medical facilities on higher levels, but those were for important patients. A human exchange student did not qualify as important. Reached the medical bay door and paused. Through the small window, she could see lying on a bed. The girl was connected to machines that monitored her heart and breathing. Her face was covered in bruises. Her arm was wrapped in bandages. She looked so small and fragile in the dim light. Something stirred in his chest. Anger, deep, burning anger. She had been trained to control her emotions. A ghost was supposed to feel nothing during a mission, but looking at this young girl, beaten and abandoned, felt her control slipping. These aliens had hurt one of her people. They had hurt a child, and they had laughed about it. Push the anger down. There would be time for feelings later. Right now she had a job to do. She slipped into the room without making a sound. Eyes were closed, but they flickered open as approached the bed. Fear filled those eyes for a moment, the fear of someone who had learned to expect pain. "It's okay," whispered in Korean. "I'm here to take you home." His eyes widened. "You're human." "My name is, I'm a soldier. Earth sent us to get you." She began disconnecting the monitoring equipment carefully. "Can you walk?" Tried to sit up, but pain flashed across her face. I don't think so." "That's fine, I'll carry you." Wrapped a thermal blanket around the girl's thin body. "Trust me, everything is going to be okay now." Tears started to fall from his eyes. "I thought no one was coming. I thought no one cared." Lifted her easily, holding her like she weighed nothing. "We always care, and we never leave our people behind." Through her communicator, she heard his voice. "Status. Target secured. Moving to extraction point." "Good. Phase 2 begins in 3 minutes. Get clear." Moved quickly through the corridors, carrying in her arms. The girl was light, far too light. She had lost so much weight during her months on the station. The thought made anger burn hotter. In the maintenance tunnels was finishing his work. He had planted charges on the station's military armory with careful precision. These were not ordinary explosives. They would destroy weapons and equipment, but they would not kill anyone. They would not breach the station's hull. They would simply send a message that could not be ignored. "Charges set," reported, "ready to make some noise." "Hold until my signal," replied. Captain climbed through the maintenance shafts toward level 12. Through the metal grating above him, he could hear voices, laughter, the sound of glasses clicking together, and his friends were still celebrating, completely unaware of the danger closing in around them. Checked his weapon one more time. His body was calm, his mind was focused. In 30 seconds, everything would change. He said quietly, "Are you ready?" From the silent thunder's voice came through clear. "Every screen on this station is under my control, every speaker, every communication channel. Just say the word. Begin broadcasting the video in 90 seconds. I want the whole galaxy to see what these creatures did." "Understood." Took a deep breath, then he moved. The grating above him flew open without a sound, rose from the maintenance shaft like a spirit rising from the earth. He stood in the middle of the lounge, surrounded by who were too surprised to react. For one frozen moment, everyone stared at him. The human was dressed in black, his face covered by a mask that left only his eyes visible. He stood completely still, like a statue carved from shadow. Then recognized what he was seeing. A human, in his private lounge. This was impossible. Security should have detected him. The doors should have stopped him. Humans couldn't do things like this. "Guards!" shouted, reaching for the weapon at his belt. His friends moved too. 6, all young and fit, all trained in combat. They were confident in their strength. Humans were weak, everyone knew that. 1 human against 7 was not a fight, it was a joke. Showed them how wrong they were. He moved faster than their eyes could follow. The first swung at him and found himself flying across the room, his arm bent at an impossible angle. The second tried to grab him and was thrown into the third, both of them crashing into a table. The fourth managed to draw his weapon but was already behind him, one hand on his neck. The collapsed like a puppet with cut strings. 5, 6. Each one fell in less than a second. His movements were precise and controlled. He broke bones but avoided killing. He disabled weapons without destroying them. He was not fighting. He was demonstrating. In 4 seconds it was over. 6 lay on the floor, groaning in pain. Only remained standing, his weapon finally drawn but his hands shaking so badly he could barely hold it. Walked toward him slowly. Each step was deliberate. Each step was a message. "You hurt one of ours," said. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "That was a mistake." Tried to fire his weapon, but his finger would not obey. Fear had frozen him completely. This was not possible. Humans were weak. Humans were servants. Humans were nothing. Then why was he so afraid? Moved in a blur. The weapon flew from his hand. A moment later, he felt fingers close around his throat. He was lifted off the ground like he weighed nothing at all. The human held him with one hand, not even straining. "Please," gasped. "My father, High Ambassador, he will." "Your father cannot help you now," said. "No one can help you now." He threw across the room. The young crashed into the wall and slid to the floor, barely conscious. Secured his hands with restraints that glowed with strange energy. The same restraints were placed on the other 6. Said into his communicator, "Now." The explosion was felt throughout the station. The military armory on level 3 vanished in a ball of fire. Weapons worth millions of credits were destroyed in an instant. Alarms began to scream. Emergency lights flashed. Chaos spread through every corridor. And then the screens came alive. Every screen on Orbital Nexus 7 lit up with the same image. The video of being beaten played for all to see. 12,000 beings watched a young human girl being tortured by elites. They watched her beg for mercy. They watched her blood spread across the floor. The video ended and words appeared on every screen. Simple words, terrible words. "Earth remembers, Earth responds." Station Commander stood in the security center, watching the chaos unfold. His officers ran in every direction, responding to alarms that led nowhere. The sensor network was blind. The communication system was compromised. And now the entire galaxy was watching the footage of crime. "Find them," screamed. "Find the humans." But he knew, deep in his heart, that it was already too late. The humans had already won. The message had been sent, and the Dominion would never be seen the same way again. On level 12, dragged his prisoners toward the extraction point. They would face human justice. They would stand trial for their crimes, and the whole galaxy would watch. This was the message. This was the lesson. Do not touch our people, ever. Orbital Nexus 7 was drowning in chaos. Alarms screamed through every corridor. Emergency lights painted the walls in flashing red. Soldiers ran from level to level, searching for enemies they could not find. And on every screen, the video played again and again. The footage had escaped the station, had made sure of that. She had sent it through every communication channel in the sector. Within an hour, it would reach 100 different worlds. Within a day, the entire galaxy would see what and his friends had done to a human girl. High Ambassador burst into the security center with fury in all 4 of his eyes. He was dressed in sleeping clothes, awakened from his rest by the explosion. His usually perfect appearance was ruined. His hands were shaking with rage. "What is happening?" he demanded. "Where is my son?" Station Commander could barely meet his gaze. "Ambassador, we have a situation. Human infiltrators have." "Human infiltrators," grabbed by the collar. "Humans on my station, that is impossible." "It is happening, Ambassador. They have taken and the others, they destroyed our armory, and they have broadcast the footage." Turned to look at the screens. He saw his son beating a helpless human girl. He saw the blood. He heard the laughter. His face went pale. This was not supposed to happen. Humans were supposed to be quiet. They were supposed to file complaints and make diplomatic protests. They were not supposed to fight back. They were not supposed to come into his station and take his son. "Lock down all exits," ordered. "Scramble the fleet. Nothing leaves this station. Nothing." The fleet outside the station received the command. 15 warships powered up their weapons and engines. They scanned the surrounding space for any sign of human vessels. Their sensors showed nothing. Empty space in every direction. Commander of the warship frowned at his displays. "There is nothing here," he muttered. "No human ships detected." "Keep scanning," his officer said. "They must have a ship somewhere." They did not know that the Silent Thunder was floating less than 50 kilometers away, completely invisible. Watched their confused signals with a smile on her face. Human stealth technology was 50 years ahead of anything they could imagine. They would never see the ship. They would never catch it. Inside the station, led his team through the maintenance tunnels. They moved fast, dragging their unconscious prisoners behind them, carried on her back the girl wrapped in the thermal blanket, walked at the rear, his weapon ready for any threat. 5 minutes to extraction point, reported through the communicator. I'm keeping the sensors blind, but you need to move faster. They're mobilizing security teams. Increased his pace. The tunnels were narrow and dark, but his enhanced eyes saw everything clearly. He could hear footsteps above them, soldiers running through the corridors, searching in all the wrong places. Captain said from behind him, "The girl is awake. She wants to say something." Slowed for a moment and looked back. Eyes were open, filled with tears and something else, hope. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for coming." "Save your thanks for when we're home," replied. "We're not done yet." They reached the extraction point, a small docking bay that they had forgotten about. The silent thunder was already waiting, its cargo door open. Invisible to sensors, it looked like nothing was there, but the team could see it through their special visors. One by one, they boarded the ship. The prisoners were secured in the holding cells, was taken to the medical bay, where advanced human technology would complete her healing. The team took their positions. "All aboard," reported. "Get us out of here." The silent thunder's engines hummed to life. The ship began to move, sliding through space like a whisper on the wind. The fleet continued to scan in every direction, but they saw nothing. Then something unexpected happened. A warship, moved directly into the silent thunder's path. It was a coincidence, a random patrol pattern, but it was enough. The silent thunder would have to pass within 100 meters of the warship. "They might detect us at that range," warned. "Our stealth isn't perfect against close contact." Considered the options. They could wait for the warship to move. They could take a longer route, or they could take a risk. "How long until they move out of our path?" 20 minutes minimum. Too long. By then the station would have organized a proper search. They might find the docking bay. They might discover the escape route. "Take us through," decided. "If they detect us, we go loud." The silent thunder accelerated. It passed at incredible speed, close enough to see the lights in its windows. For one terrible moment, everything was silent. Then alarms began to sound on the warship. "Contact!" someone screamed on the unknown vessel bearing 274. Commander on the heard the report. "All ships converge on those coordinates. Do not let them escape." But the silent thunder was already moving. Its engines, designed in secret facilities on Earth, produced speeds that they had never seen. The warships tried to pursue, but the human vessel was pulling away. "They're fast," one officer gasped. "Too fast, we can't catch them." Commander slammed his fist on his console. "Fire, fire everything." Weapons launched from 15 warships. Missiles and energy beams filled the space where the silent thunder had been. But the human vessel twisted and dodged with impossible agility. It seemed to know where every shot would land before it was fired. Not a single weapon touched its hull. "This is impossible," breathed. "What kind of ship is that?" On the station, High Ambassador watched the chase through the security screens. His face was gray with shock. Humans were not supposed to have ships like this. Humans were not supposed to have soldiers who could infiltrate the most secure stations in the Dominion. Humans were supposed to be weak. The silent thunder reached the edge of the system and vanished into hyperspace. One moment it was there, and the next it was gone. The fleet had failed. The humans had escaped. And they had taken with them. Stood in silence for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Get me a channel to the Earth ambassador, now." 3 hours later was in his private office, facing a holographic image of Admiral. The old human looked calm, his hands folded in front of him, his eyes showing no emotion. "You have committed an act of war," said. "You attacked our station. You kidnapped my son. The Dominion will not tolerate this." Admiral smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "Your son attacked a human citizen. He beat a young girl nearly to death and recorded it for entertainment. We have the footage. The galaxy has the footage. That footage was obtained illegally. That footage shows your son's crime. It shows your security forces ignoring a victim's pleas for help. It shows the true face of the Dominion." The Admiral leaned forward. "Do you really want to declare war over this, Ambassador? Do you want the galaxy to see what else we can do?" His hands clenched into fists. "You are threatening us." "I am informing you. For 50 years we have been peaceful. We have smiled and bowed and traded fairly. We did this because we believed in peace. We hoped that all species could live together in harmony." The Admiral's voice hardened. "But do not mistake our kindness for weakness. We have capabilities you cannot imagine, ships you cannot see, soldiers you cannot stop, and we will use every single one of them to protect our people." The ambassador was silent. He wanted to rage, to threaten, to demand. But something in the human's eyes stopped him. Something cold and terrible. Something that made him realize for the first time that he might have made a terrible mistake. "What do you want?" finally asked. "Your son and his accomplices will stand trial on Earth. They will answer for their crimes under human law. You will issue a formal apology to and to all of humanity. And you will ensure that nothing like this ever happens again." Closed his eyes. He had no choice. The footage had spread too far. The galaxy was watching. If he refused, if he declared war, he might win. The Dominion was powerful, but the cost would be enormous. And after seeing what humans could do, he was no longer sure of victory. "Agreed," he said quietly. The Admiral nodded. "A wise decision, Ambassador. We look forward to continued peace between our peoples." The hologram faded, was left alone in his office, staring at the empty space where the human had been. He had underestimated them. They all had. And now, the galaxy would never make that mistake again. The silent thunder dropped out of hyperspace above Earth 3 days after the mission. The blue and green planet filled the windows, more beautiful than any alien world. Home. Woke in the ship's medical bay with sunlight on her face. Not real sunlight yet, just the warm glow of healing lamps, but it felt like home. Her body no longer hurt. The bruises were fading. The broken bones had been repaired by technology far more advanced than anything on the station. Was sitting beside her bed, reading something on a tablet. When she noticed was awake, she smiled. "Good morning," said. "How do you feel?" Took a moment to think about the question. She felt different. Not just healed, but somehow stronger. The fear that had lived inside her for months was still there, but it was smaller now. A shadow instead of a monster. "I feel okay," she said. "Where are we?" "Earth orbit. We'll be landing in Seoul in about an hour. Your family is waiting." At the mention of her family's eyes filled with tears. She had thought she would never see them again. She had thought she would die on that station, alone and forgotten. But she was wrong. The others said, wiping her eyes. "And his friends, what will happen to them?" "They will stand trial for their crimes. Human law, human judges. The whole galaxy will be watching." Put down her tablet and looked at seriously. "What they did to you was terrible, but they will face justice. Real justice." Nodded slowly. She did not feel happy about it. She did not feel satisfied. She just felt tired. But somewhere deep inside she felt something else too, something like hope. The shuttle landed at a military base outside Seoul. When the doors opened, saw her mother running toward her with tears streaming down her face. Her father was right behind, trying to look strong but failing. They embraced her so tightly she could barely breathe. She did not want them to let go. "My baby," her mother sobbed. "My beautiful baby, you're home, you're safe." Captain watched from a distance as the family reunited. His team stood beside him, quiet and still. Their mission was complete. The girl was safe. The criminals were in custody. The message had been sent, but felt no satisfaction, only a cold certainty that this was not the end. The galaxy had learned that humans could fight back. Some would respect them for it, others would fear them, and some, he knew, would want revenge. The ghosts would be ready. 1 month later's trial began. The court was on Earth, in a building in Geneva that had been constructed specifically for interstellar cases. Cameras broadcast the proceedings to every corner of the galaxy. Billions of beings watched as the young and his 6 accomplices sat in their chairs, facing human judges for the first time. High Ambassador was present, watching from a gallery reserved for diplomatic observers. His face was a mask of controlled emotion. He had hired the best lawyers from a dozen species to defend his son. He had pulled every string, called in every favor, but nothing could change the footage. Nothing could erase what everyone had seen. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Witnesses about the harassment had suffered. Medical reports described her injuries in detail, and the video played again and again, showing exactly what and his friends had done. When it was time for the verdict, the entire galaxy held its breath. Guilty, the head judge announced, on all counts. Was sentenced to 15 years in a human rehabilitation facility. His accomplices received between 5 and 12 years depending on their involvement. They would serve their sentences on Earth, far from their home and their privilege. High Ambassador said nothing. He simply stood and walked out of the courtroom. He never looked at his son again. 6 months after her rescue, stood before the United Earth Council. The great chamber was filled with representatives from every nation, along with observers from dozens of alien species. Cameras broadcast her image across the stars. She was nervous, her hands were shaking, but she had asked to speak and they had listened. This was her chance to tell her story in her own words. When I was selected for the exchange program, she began, her voice soft but clear, I thought it was the greatest day of my life. I was so excited to meet other species, to learn about the galaxy, to represent humanity among the stars. She paused, gathering her thoughts. What I found was different. I found cruelty. I found beings who saw me as lesser, as nothing, simply because I was human. They hurt me. They laughed at me. They left me bleeding on the floor. The chamber was silent. No one moved. No one looked away. But Earth did not abandon me. When I had lost all hope, when I thought I would die alone, my people came for me. Soldiers I had never met risked everything to bring me home. Her voice grew stronger. They taught me something important, something that I want the galaxy to understand. Looked directly at the cameras, directly at the billions of beings watching across 100 worlds. We humans choose peace. We choose kindness. We choose to smile and bow and trade fairly because we believe that all species can live together in harmony. We choose not to fight, even when we are insulted and mistreated, but do not mistake our choices for weakness. She straightened her shoulders. We are not weak. We have simply chosen not to show our strength. But if you hurt our people, if you torment our children, if you push us too far, we will respond. We will find you wherever you hide. We will bring you to justice no matter how powerful you think you are. And we will show you exactly what humanity is capable of. Her final words rang through the chamber like a bell. We hope we never have to prove it again. When she finished speaking, the chamber erupted in applause. Not just from humans, but from many of the alien observers as well. Species who had suffered under arrogance saw humanity in a new light. They saw a people who were kind but not weak, peaceful but not helpless. In a secure facility somewhere on Earth, Captain watched the broadcast with his team. When finished her speech, raised a glass of water. To the girl who reminded the galaxy why you don't mess with humans, she said. They drank in silence, their eyes never leaving the screen. Outside the window, the stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere out there, trillions of beings were revising their opinions about humanity. They were learning a simple truth that should have been obvious from the beginning. Humans were kind because they chose to be. Humans were peaceful because they wanted to be. But beneath that kindness, beneath that peace, there was something else, something ancient, something forged in millions of years of survival on a dangerous planet. Humans were the children of Earth. They had survived ice ages and plagues, wars and disasters. They had climbed from caves to stars in the blink of a cosmic eye, and they would never, ever abandon their own. The ghosts returned to their sleep, waiting for the next call. Admiral retired a year later, satisfied that he had left Earth stronger than he found it, went back to school on Earth, studying xenobiology with a new perspective. And across the galaxy, beings whispered about what they had learned. Humans smiled and bowed and traded fairly. They were kind to strangers and slow to anger. They chose peace whenever possible. But they never forgot, and they were always ready. If you hurt their people, they would come for you. And when humans came, there was no place in the galaxy far enough to hide.